Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So, in this episode, I will be discussing the 1984 science fiction movie Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, directed this time round by none other than Spock himself, Leonard Nimoy, in his first directorial debut for the Star Trek franchise, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. This film continues the trilogy which started with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, released 2 years prior in 1982, being the second in the series, and sees the return, once again, of the Enterprise and its crew from the original series and some of the characters from The Wrath of Khan, which then embark on a perilous journey to save their friend. So, before I start, I just want to state that this episode will include spoilers for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, as without this film, the basis for The Search for Spock will make no sense. There will also be spoilers for The Search for Spock, so if you don't want to hear these, switch off now, but please come back to obviously give me your thoughts and comments on the film and to obviously finish off the review. But following on directly from the events that transpired at the end of the last film, The Wrath of Khan, we join a broken Enterprise, barely holding together with basically a skeleton crew, sad hearts for the loss of their friend, Spock, who of course gave his own life to save the Enterprise and its crew following a crippling but victorious battle with Khan in the last film. The Enterprise makes its return to Earth, where its battle scars are more than evident as it pulls into spaceport. The look on and disgust and disbelief on people's faces as it passes by, it's priceless. And more evidently so as the Enterprise passes by Starfleet's newest addition, the experimental flagship, the Excelsior. As it turns out, we learn that Spock's essence and memories may very well actually be alive and kicking, having been transferred prior to his death. It just so happens that Bones, as played by DeForest Kelley, was the last person that Spock physically touched, and it is clear that he's not himself. Spock has actually placed himself into Bones, who you can imagine is none too chuffed about the idea. There was always this playful banter, if that's what you can call it, between Bones and Spock, as Bones tried to understand Spock's logic on occasions, sometimes resulting in some really quite heated debates, well, mostly on Bones' side. Spock has no emotions, so I can't suppose he cared too much. Seemed so quite ironic, I think, then, if of course I've used them words correctly, that Bones would then end up with Spock inside his head. Poetic justice of sorts, perhaps. The battle of wits going on with Bones between the logic and emotion in his own head provides a bit of welcome longevity to the film. We then join the crew of the Enterprise, well, most of them anyway, as they journey back to Genesis, the planet created in the last film, in a race against time and against some Klingons, to save Spock's soul and bring their friend back in a series of moves which kind of sees them become renegades in the process. Unlike its predecessors, this film is a little less dark in style, although it does have some quite cutting and sombre moments. Personally, I have always found the film to come across a little bit slow. It seems to take quite a while to charm and to get kind of into all the action. Most of the film opts to take place on the planet Genesis, with kind of less in-space action than the film's predecessors. However, I must say that after watching it for this review once again, when it does get into the action and the main story, it doesn't disappoint, with an absolutely cracking display of ingenuity from Scotty in a showdown between the beaten-up Enterprise and the Excelsior. The scene is just absolutely simply priceless. For me, the movie is also noteworthy for the fact that it features the first real immersive encounter with the Klingons, as we've kind of come to know them from the next generation, if you like. We did see them in the original series, but they were not made up to look like the Klingons we know and love today. It wasn't until the motion picture that the Klingons' appearance was updated, shall we say, but even then, their appearance was all for a matter like of 5 minutes before they were annihilated. In The Search for Spock, they are the main antagonists, with a group of Klingons trying to obtain the secrets of the Genesis project, which they perceive to be a weapon of ultimate destruction. Along with the Klingons, we also learn more about the mythology and culture of the Vulcans in more depth than we had kind of perhaps previously, apart from, I must say, a couple of episodes of the original series. With this, for me, taking over the action this time around, perhaps. The film also continues the magic we saw in the previous film in terms of the feeling of friendship and camaraderie among the main crew. In fact, in order to save Spock, they actually commit the ultimate act of such friendship and put everything that they have worked for their entire lives on the line. Absolutely true Star Trek spirit. There is also more of the classic double-cross manoeuvre, one already mentioned, but one which also results in the ultimate sacrifice, the destruction of the Enterprise. As the crew are looking out to the sky as their beloved ship is seen in flames after being basically set to self-destruct, you just can't help but draw a tear in sympathy for what that ship meant to them. An absolutely heart-wrenching moment, but set against the moment the Klingon captain, as played by Christopher Lloyd, realised the deception. Absolutely exquisite. I must say that Christopher Lloyd, who of course was the Doc in Back to the Future, looks absolutely fantastic as a Klingon and really delivers a superb performance as the Klingon captain. No mercy, no remorse, simply cold and calculating. And in this movie, for me, it's the Klingon vessel that steals the show this time. Okay, so the Enterprise is good, but it does look a little worse for wear. And I think there was a deliberate attempt to make it look like lesser of a ship against the new experimental flagship Excelsior, which looks closer to the more modernised versions of the Enterprise, quite sleek and majestic. But we don't really get to see that ship in action, although we are treated to some awesome shots of the vessel in space dock, and obviously in pursuit with the Enterprise for what it can be. What we do get to see, however, is the Klingon bird of prey, up close and personal, which is done in extraordinary detail and commands some serious presence when on screen. One thing that tickled me with the Klingons was the commander's dog. Well, at least the kind of Klingon equivalent of a dog. It didn't look much like a dog. It didn't really do much, bar snarl. But the thing that got me was the fact that the Klingons are supposed to be afraid of nothing. But when the captain tells one of his crew to feed the pet, there was just this distinct look of fear on his face. Makes you wonder how bad the creature would actually be in the wild. The movie also sees James Horner return as the composer, extending and kind of manipulating the themes he introduced as part of the Wrath of Khan. However, these have kind of been toned down, in my opinion, in favour of a more romanticised feel, giving them a more mysterious quality. Whilst, still strong in their own right, I just don't find them quite as powerful as those used in the film's predecessor. And, rather think about it, on a last note, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty much sure that I caught a glimpse of a Tribble in one of the scenes at the bar at the spaceport as Bones is trying to charter a flight to Genesis. A great throwback, I thought, to an absolutely classic episode of the original series. Overall, then I wouldn't say this is the strongest entry into the Star Trek movie series, but still worth a watch. And it's one that adds some further depth to each of the characters and to some of the alien races, such as the Vulcans and the Klingons. Not as much space action as its predecessors, but still enough to keep me happy. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, gaming, movie games, all sorts of movie-related things. But most of all, yes, thank you very much for watching. We do hope to see you return at SciFirst MovieTalk. Thank you and goodbye.